Hi, welcome to Pastor Talk. I'm Pastor Steve. I want to talk to you today about a subject matter that's really a huge subject matter because it's a principle of God, but it's just a reality of things, both in the spiritual realm and in the physical realm. And so let me read to you first the scripture. I'm going to read in Galatians chapter 6, verse 1. If you haven't read the scripture I recommended to read, then you might want to pause the video for a moment and read the first 8 verses of chapter 6 of Galatians and then come back to the video. But I want to talk to you about the subject matter of sowing and reaping. Let us read Galatians 6, verse 7. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap. This is a principle of God. It's a reality of life, physically and spiritually. And it helps us, I think, as Christians, if we understand this principle, even the strength of it, because it's backed up by Scripture. You know, we have an expression, even in the physical realm, the worldly realm. You don't have to be a believer to understand this. The world understands this, and they have an expression, and you can probably complete it as I give it to you. What goes around, that's right, what goes around comes around. Same thing. What a person sows, they shall also reap. I had a good friend many years ago who I grew up with in the Lord, a good close friend, and we had Bible studies together and studied a lot together. But he said he one day was sitting under a tree, and he said he began thinking about this scripture of sowing and reaping, and he said he had just one thought after another, and he felt like God was trying to show stuff to him about it. And he looked at nature, and he recognized that all nature was a process of sowing and reaping. A tree, for instance, will drop a seed, and as other plants do, and the seedling becomes another plant. And so you have the sowing, reaping, as well as the rest of nature as you look at it. And he said he began looking at that, and the gist of the whole thing that he came up with, that God really dealt with him about, was the fact that in our lives, every one of us, that the process of sowing and reaping is in everything. You see, where you go, what you say, how you act, what you look at, what you read, what you don't read, what you look at, what you don't look at. Your relationships, how you speak and act toward others, your relationships with God, your relationship with them, how much you put into your Christian walk, you'll reap according to how much you give to God of yourself. But your giving of yourself to things reaps. And I'm going to use a word just because I think it's a good word in our culture today. Sowing has consequences. You see, our culture is teaching our young people that there's no consequences in life, which goes against God's truth of what we just read. But not only that, think how serious that becomes. If there's no consequences in life, then is there a judgment one day? Is there a day when we will be judged for our lives? Sowing our lives will receive consequences. So I just want to throw that out there for you. Very important that we understand there's a sowing and reaping process in life. Well, my friend had a powerful truth, a huge truth. It's so huge, there's no way we can cover it all in a short video like this, but I think there's 2 or 3 basic things we need to see today. And I'll probably do 2 or 3 more videos that are connected in some way to this verse. But first of all, we need to understand that this is a principle, a process, and it is relevant to every one of us in our lives all day. What we see, what we say. Jesus said these things. He says, by your words you'll be justified, and by your words you shall be condemned. See, our words are spiritual, but you know there's spiritual consequences of reaping from what we say. He says, judge not, lest ye also be judged. Sowing and reaping. How we judge others will be judged back. How we condemn others will be a process, will be condemned as well. And so we have to be very careful about judging others, don't we? In this text today, I want us to see just 3 things. First of all, the principle is relevant to all of us in every aspect of our lives. And secondly, in this particular verse, He says, be not deceived, God is not mocked, and he's making it very clear that God's involved. So often we do things not realizing God is involved. He knows our motives. He knows what we did. He knows what we're looking at. He knows what we should have done and didn't do. See, God knows it all, and God is not mocked. And therefore, in a Christian's life in particular, we need to understand that we're sowing all the time, and God's going to give us what we reap. And it may not be the same to each and every one of us. He deals differently according to how much you understand and your age and your maturity as a Christian. So we reap and we sow and God gives us the consequences of the reaping. And so we need to recognize that as a powerful part of this verse. God's involved. And the last thing is, well, what was he saying in this verse? We should always ask ourselves, why did the writer, in this case the Apostle Paul, inspired by God, why did he write this verse? What did he mean? What does it mean for me and to me in my life? Is it relevant to me? Well, in the first verse, it gives us the key to why he said this. Brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, this is Galatians 6:1, ye which are spiritual, in other words, mature Christians, restore such a one in the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. Basically, he's saying this. As a mature Christian, if you've grown in the Lord, you're going to run into younger Christians, or it doesn't have to be a younger Christian, but someone that falls into a sin. And you're going to help them overcome, confess it, get it behind them, get their relationship restored back to God or with other people if they've sinned against others. And he's saying be very careful, do it in love. Don't do it condemning, don't look down on them, don't condemn them in your heart. Because he says, considering thyself. So there's a process of when you're helping others and maturing others, you're sowing yourself in their life, and you must be very careful to do it properly in love. Because if you don't, then if you're condemning, God's going to show you. He's going to show you that you can be tempted and fall into a fault or a sin just like they did. And so he's saying, that's really what he's getting at here. So be not deceived. God is not mocked. Whatever you sow, a man shall also reap. And so this is toward a negative side of things, but there's a positive side too. We'll talk about that in another video. But anyway, I hope this has been instructive to you. Recognize that what goes around does come around. And this is Pastor Talk for you. And I'm Pastor Steve. And God bless you.